Welcome, everybody. Today we are going to discuss generational bias in the workplace. By the end of this presentation, it is our hope that everyone is able to recognize an unconscious bias, differentiate between the 5 generations that appear in the workforce today, and be equipped with the tools to properly mitigate both unconscious bias and generational bias specifically, and have tools to work past our own biases. Organizations are built around diversity. A range of race, gender, religion, political ideation, and age make up most work environments. Benefiting from these differences is one way organizations can grow and excel. Diversity is the mix. Inclusion is making the mix work, says leadership and diversity expert Andreas Tapa. When we look at our own organizations and teams, we see a mixture of people. What we need to do is take time to look at making our organization's unique mixture work. What strategies bring us closer to inclusion? And what things or biases might be getting in our way?
Many of us are not aware of what an unconscious bias really is. An unconscious bias is a social stereotype about certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. It is key to note that everyone and every organization has unconscious biases. These biases can also be positive or negative. In our efforts to explore generational bias, we are going to watch a quick video giving us some examples related to this topic.
Here's my group. This is Generation X. 45 million people in the U.S. Tend to be the most cynical, unhappy, unpleasant, and unlikable people you'll ever come across. That's kind of a generalization. But if you think about everyone you don't like, they're all Generation Xers. I have no doubt about that. A quick compare and contrast will spell this out very clearly. Now, let's talk first about the baby boomers. Baby boomers in this room. When you were a newborn baby, brand new, fresh, still steaming baby, how did you get home from the hospital? Likely like this, right? In a parent's arms on the front seat of the car. The car had a metal dashboard. The car had no seat belt. At the time, the reference to an airbag was Uncle Joe. Don't talk to Uncle Joe. He's an airbag. Don't let that guy. Don't talk to him. It has no context like it has today. In baby boomers, if your parents truly loved you, brand new, fresh, still steaming baby boomer, if your parents truly loved you, they cracked the window while they smoked on the way home. You can see this, right? Baby boomers in this room, were you ever told that you were special and unique and different from everyone else? Probably not. If you ever heard something like that, it sounded something like this. What do you think, you're special or something? So it was actually an accusation to stand out. To be different was an accusation. And then today, let's go to the slides. Then today, we begin to see things like this. These are my daughter's ribbons from the swim meet this past summer. We have 8th, 10th, 7th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 5th, 11th, 10th, and another 11th place ribbon. That's a talented child, isn't it? I do not make this up. She got an 11th place ribbon in a 6-lane pool. This summer, I'll drive my children, again, to North Carolina from Mobile, Alabama. They'll all be in the car seat doing what? You know this. What are they doing back there? Exactly. This, TV, this, game, something like that. Many of them have a headphone on. I can't hear. And I should be grateful that they're quiet. But I feel like there's a rite of passage in our nation that is being missed on these kids, and that is being beat with a yardstick on a road trip. It's something that has helped all of us, I imagine, in some way or another. And I can just imagine making eye contact with one of my children somewhere between Montgomery, Alabama and Atlanta and showing them this yardstick as I'm going down the road and making eye contact with them and them realizing slowly, he's about to hit me with this yardstick. And saying to them, I can't explain to you why this is good for you. And they're in a 5-point harness, so they can't run. That's the best part about it. They're in a 5-point, they can't go anywhere. To put this in context for the millennials, this is a commercial that was shown on a television that people actually had to get up and walk across the room and touch the unit to change the channel. It was hand to mouth. Difficult times back then. This television had 2 metallic telescoping things that would come out of the top. And you would twist these things to try to get the signal a little bit better. Signal? Did he just say signal? Signal. When you twisted them around and it didn't work, you would go to the kitchen and you would come from the kitchen with a big sheet of what? That's right. If you said tinfoil, raise your hand. Look at them. Those are old people. It hadn't been tinfoil in a long time. If you said tinfoil, it's because your kitchen drawer is full of tinfoil because you won't throw it away. It's still good. Well, I don't need to throw this away. It's next to a ball of rubber bands or something like that. We might need all these things someday. One more. You would walk to the unit. You would place your hand on the knob. In perhaps a hurry, you would change it quickly, and you would come away with the knob in your hand. And you would say things under your breath. You'd place the knob on top of that television, and you'd go and get a pair of pliers. There you go. There are people here who know exactly what I'm talking about. However, the millennials in the room are going, pliers? I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. I've seen these TVs at the Smithsonian in Washington. They're under glass. You can't touch them anymore. They've got alarms if you get too close. Wow. But every now and then, people produce truly special, different, unique people. Contrast this with the 9th place soccer team. What are they carrying? Trophies, that's right. 0-9, trophies and pizza for everybody. Who's doing this? Right here. This is my generation that's making this happen right now. So I want you to contrast this. This has likely been a big part of your patient base and perhaps will be coming up. They're not gone. They're just a big part of the patient base. As an administrator, as the MDs back at your practices, whatever it may be, the chances are someone from this generation played a huge role in preparing them for what they do, as either a teacher or more likely a mentor. Somebody took them under their arm and said, you can do this and I'm going to help you do it. This is where it's come from. This is what's coming. This is a lot of your history, your bones, where you've been. This is the next generation. This is my generation. This is the Xers and the millennials. They're having babies. They're chock-a-block in the maternity ward these days. This is a lot of where you got your values from, and this is who's back at your offices keeping an eye on things while you're with me right now.
Right now, organizations can have up to 5 generations working side by side. Each of these generations has unique characteristics and strengths, so let's introduce the generations. The oldest of our generations is the traditionalists, sometimes called the silent generation. These are individuals who grew up during World War II or the Great Depression. They are patriotic and fiscally conservative. Right now, they make up less than 2% of the U.S. workforce. The baby boomers are a generation of change. Heavily active in the civil rights movement, they've now become more conservative. They value individualism and luxury. Working has been a huge part of their identities. 65% of boomers plan to work past the age of 65, and some don't plan to retire at all. Generation X is known for independence and skepticism. They prioritize having a work-life balance. Their 9 to 5 shouldn't compromise their family time. Often depicted as a slacker generation, they are truly leaders in innovation. Millennials grow up with evolving technology, which lends to their adaptability. They also experienced an insurgence of homeland violence with the Columbine shootings, and 9/11 terrorist attacks. They value collaboration and pursuing passions, often over their paychecks. Gen Z, I generation, Gen Edge, post-millennials, all names for the newest generation entering the workforce. Social media is how they think and communicate, making them digitally innate. They are realistic about money, preferring to save rather than spend, and are wary of student debt. They are characterized by their entrepreneurial spirit.
We are now going to move on to a generational activity. Try to match the generational attributes with each of the 5 generations in today's workforce. First, a quick sample question. Take a few seconds to see if you can try and match each generation with the time frame that each generation was born. Once you check your answers, how well did you do? Now on to the positives. This generation is characterized by their enthusiasm, tech savviness, and opportunistic nature. Formative experiences include 9/11, social media, and reality TV. Can you guess which of the 5 shown generations this might be? The correct answer is the millennial generation. This next generation is characterized by their work-life balance, problem-solving ability, and managerial presence. Formative experiences include the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the PC, and email. Can you guess which of the 5 shown generations this might be? The correct answer is Generation X. This generation is characterized by their patriotism, loyalty to their organizations, and starting their families at an early age. Formative experiences include World War II, rock and roll, rationing, and nuclear family structures. Can you guess which of the 5 generations this is? The correct answer is the silent generation. This next generation is characterized by their productivity, mentorship ability, executive presence, and cost effectiveness. Formative experiences include the Cold War, Apollo missions, and Woodstock. Can you guess which of the 5 generations this is? The correct answer is the baby boomer generation. Coming to the end of the positives, this final generation is characterized by their individuality, multitasking ability, and many technological devices. Formative experiences include the Arab Spring, global warming, and becoming the producers of their own media. Can you guess which generation this might be? The correct answer is Generation Z. Now we're moving on to some of the less fortunate stereotypes of each generation. This generation is stereotyped as much less focused, less loyal to their companies, and too obsessed with technology. They tend to be impatient when they aren't getting what they want as fast as they want. Can you guess which of the 5 generations this might be? The correct answer is Generation Z. This next generation is stereotyped as having not embraced diversity and their strict definitions of gender roles, especially the role of women, and their struggle to adapt to more informality in the workplace. Additionally, they have the least representation in today's workforce. Can you guess? The correct answer is the silent generation. This generation is stereotyped via their cynicism, dubious attitude towards all other generations, and their skepticism towards organizations. Watching their loyal parents and grandparents get laid off by companies took its toll on their worldview. What do you guess the answer is? The correct answer is Generation X. This generation is stereotyped as slow to adapt to technology compared to the other generational cohorts, less adaptable and less collaborative. Perceived to be stuck in their ways, what do you guess the answer is? The correct answer is the baby boomer generation. Coming to the end of the negatives, this final generation is stereotyped as lazy, self-obsessed, and the least cost-effective. Despite high rates of volunteering and a deep commitment to their communities, they have relatively low voting rates. What do you guess the answer is? The correct answer is the millennial generation. Looking back on this activity, how did you do? It's safe to say each generation is vastly different. However, let's spend some time focusing on how these different generational cohorts are able to relate to each other and work together.
Let's look at generational differences in a real-world context, and start by taking a look at NASA. For nearly 20 years, the experts at the generational consulting company Bridgeworks have asked baby boomers and Gen Xers the same question. What is your first memory of NASA? The responses? By a large margin, baby boomers answer landing on the moon. Neil Armstrong is the first man to walk on the moon. They describe it as a moment of pride when they knew anything was possible. Gen X, on the other hand, remembers the tragedy of the Challenger explosion. One is an association with pride and the other with tragedy. The events that define generations shape our worldview. Take that idea forward. What memories might a millennial hold? Perhaps the Columbia explosion or the launch of the Mars rover. Gen Edgers may remember Curiosity rover singing itself happy birthday, or Pluto stop being a planet, or maybe some event that hasn't even happened yet. This single organization can be viewed so differently based on generation.
Having the ability to share knowledge creates greater workplace diversity and allows for greater transfer of knowledge, skill sets, and experiences. When organizations collaborate, employee morale and self-esteem can increase, resulting in a more productive workplace culture and environment. Generational diversity can have many negative impacts as well. This can be a result of diversity in knowledge and experience. Both of these can lead to the creation of various biases and stereotypes. Diversity in experience can lead to different expectations. An example of this can be seen in the following examples. Elders expect to work with the company long-term in order to receive pensions and other long-term benefits. However, younger workers have an expectation that they should be compensated for work just performed. They do not believe that this obligates them to stay with the company in any way long-term. Diversity of knowledge and experience can have impact collaboration. Individuals may avoid interacting with other generations, which can have many negative impacts on the transfer of knowledge, which makes employees less productive. It can also lead to other negative impacts on employee morale, motivation, self-esteem, which makes employees less productive. It can also create a separate workplace culture, which may intensify intergenerational competition at work and can also create distrust within the organization. A lack of trust within organizations can cause lower organizational performance and less organizational citizenship behaviors, and can also impact people's presence within the company and may even lead them to leave the company.
Overcoming a bias is challenging. Generational bias is something that most of us have probably experienced, whether we like to admit it or not. There are some ways we can help mitigate some of the bias in our organizations. The first one is changing our company culture. Many of us work in a multi-generational workforce, which means we are confronted with this bias every day. Creating a positive and enjoyable work environment is a must. How do we do that? We can host company get-togethers, celebrate milestones as a team, and grow together. The more comfortable and included everyone feels, the better chance we have at reducing this bias. Next, we can work on our communication. Having open and honest conversations with coworkers on how you prefer to communicate is important. Icebreakers and team-building exercises can help facilitate this. All perspectives must be taken into consideration, and diverse thinking is a must in order to help reduce a generational bias. We can continue to mitigate generational bias when we remove expectations. Forgetting about stereotypes and focusing on each individual's unique identity can help aid in removing the bias. Focusing on results allows us to see what each individual brings to the table and can help us realize those who could use training to develop new skills. Recognizing that each employee has different interests is important. Not everybody is at the same point in their career. Keeping employees engaged allows each employee to thrive and be successful in the workplace. Preventing discrimination is important as each employee is an asset to the workplace.
When looking to overcome challenges in the workplace, it can be a great idea to turn to the experts. There are several companies devoted to helping organizations build bridges over generational gaps. Bridgeworks is a multi-generational team of speakers and facilitators who work to organize training from staff consultations to regional conferences to help companies work with employing many generations. Their blog has regular articles to help managers and teams tackle generational challenges. When searching for insight, that they're an excellent resource. Ryan Jenkins is an international generational speaker. He specializes in helping organizations and corporations combat the challenges of having up to 5 generations in the workplace and helps workplaces adjust their cultures to be more welcoming to emerging generations.
Why do generations matter? 52% of workers say they're least likely to get along with someone from another generation. An individual's age is one of the most common predictors of differences in attitudes and behaviors. Generational differences lead to disengagement in the workplace, which can lead to poor communication, decreased productivity, leadership miscues, and more. So here are 5 tips to overcome generational differences at work. Number 1, awareness and appreciation. Before bridging the generational gap, one must be aware of how generations are formed and then must appreciate the differences that exist across generations due to the different time period that generation came of age. Make it a priority to consider the viewpoint of other generations when interacting and working across generations. Number 2, be respectful. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, "Every person I meet is my superior in some way, and in that I learn from them." We can learn something from everyone. The key is to be open to learning from anyone, no matter their age. You will build a stronger connection across generations if you approach the individual with your hat in your hand. This posture of respect is also likely to open others to explore how they can learn from you. Number 3, find common ground. Common interests are the foundation for strong relationships. Establishing common ground allows for a deeper connection to be forged. Leadership expert John C. Maxwell was spot on when he said, "It's difficult to find common ground when all you're focused on is yourself." Focus on others and strive to find common ground. Keep in mind that beyond generations, we're all humans with the same needs and aspirations. We all want to be fairly compensated, to achieve a healthy work-life balance, and the opportunity to fulfill our potential. Leverage these similarities to find common ground. Number 4, slay your assumptions. It's easy to assume how millennials want to be led, how Generation X prefers to collaborate, or how baby boomers want to communicate. Don't let your assumptions blind you to reality. Instead, ask how different generations prefer to be led, collaborate, or communicate in the workplace. Then adapt your approach to best connect with that generation. Number 5, pursue cross-generational interactions. The best way to continue learning about other generations and what they value and how they view life is rub shoulders with them. Explore ways at work or volunteering or through an association to begin interacting with different generations. In conclusion, all generations bring value to the table through their unique perspective and experiences. Finding ways to leverage their uniqueness will be a 21st century competitive advantage.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to complete this generational bias training. We hope the information about generational differences better equips you to handle the generational divides in your organization. With the skills you have learned, you should be able to be more aware of your own generational biases and avoid the pitfalls of bias by working to overcome them. Additional resources can be found on the reference slides.